How's it going, everyone? Justin J here from Booksofallshades. I'll be reviewing the book Revenge Comes Calling. Now, one thing I'd like to get clear is that as a reviewer, I take the responsibility, along with Maria and Emily, to know that what we say is contingent heavily on the way we enjoy things as a consumer, but also the way that we would want our stories told to another as the consumer. So respectively said, this is just how I would want something to be told to me, or how I would want something to be told to my readers, if it were that way. So when I tell you these opinions, it's really just about my experience, and it's good to know that it's me that's saying it, because while I see something a certain way, Emily and Maria may have a completely different analysis. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to have to talk about what I didn't like about this book, because that is, unfortunately, a majority of how I felt towards this book. There was a lot of displeasement, and I was very unsatisfied while reading it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the book cover. Well, you're probably thinking, why is he reviewing the book cover? Isn't this all about what's inside the book that counts? And then there's the old adage, don't judge a book by its cover. But let's be real, we judge everything by its cover. We judge people, we judge organizations, we judge the things that we purchase for ourselves. And even if not, we try to read the nutrition facts in the back of whatever. Now, while me, Maria, and Emily receive free books from indie authors within the community, we're giving our feedback to other consumers who would have a chance to buy these things, these stories that these authors want to tell. Inadvertently, we have taken the responsibility of giving our opinion to help gauge where that consumer is going to want to go afterward. Now, with that in mind, you'll hear us say a lot of the time, we would never have bought this if it were never sent to us. And I often think the case has to do with not only the genre, because, this club is making us a lot more open, so that's not so much the case, but it's the cover. The presentation is everything. In my opinion, when you look at a book cover, a movie trailer, or anything that's supposed to be the resume of whatever product that you're trying to sell, and you have to understand that if you're going to be the person on the other spectrum of consumers, sellers, and entrepreneurs, you have to acknowledge what people want to see and what they like to see. They want to be sold the story in less than 10 seconds through the cover. The presentation in this sense is everything. When I look at this cover, I don't see anything other than the title. The title says, Revenge Comes Calling, but nothing about this cover indicates that to me at all. It tells me as the consumer, hypothetically, let's say if I wanted to buy a book of this genre, that it's two people standing on a lake with some intent of revenge that may be coming towards them, or they may be pursuing. But I shouldn't really have to guess. And that's what I mean by the responsibility falling on the person who's selling a product. And even if it's free, you want people to get into your product, but the image, the cover, the presentation in this case is everything, because that's how they're going to even get to your story. But being that this is free and it's been given to me, I'd like to thank the author, 𝗓𝗏, which I hope I didn't pronounce wrong, for giving the three of us this copy to review. Now, when I first started this story, I didn't know what to think, because again, the cover didn't really give me anything to go off of, so I was going in completely blind. I don't even, in most cases, I don't like to read the description because I like being surprised. And I also stay away from Emily and Maria's reviews because I don't want to be biased on what they say. So when I delved in, I had no idea what to expect. But the story starts off with the main character who is dreaming about someone named Casey. But after meeting Casey, I was set to meet actually a lot of characters in this story. And to be honest, midway through the story, I remember actually 3/4 as well, I had met so many characters that they were just floating labels to me at this point at that point I should say, because I just couldn't put a name to a face. I couldn't even put a characteristic to one another because everyone was speaking sort of the same. Even the dialogue was starting to become repetitive at many points. I remember a lot of times when I was reading, I had to check back and forth and make sure that I wasn't on the same page. And it's mostly because the dialogue wasn't carried as organically as one may have wanted it to be. This is what the pattern seemed to be. The characters would get to a location, they would discover something, then they would get caught, and then that person would try to argue or reason with them. And after the characters cursed each other out for a little bit and they argued, another character would be brought into a picture, sometimes 2 or 3 at a time, and most of the time during the story I kept thinking, what the hell is going on? Because I was so lost. So one thing that is really important to note is that it's very fun to write a lot of characters. It does feel like there are a lot of personalities that are floating around, but in this sort of chaos, it seems like they're floating around in a tornado. The names keep spewing out from the top of the tornado and they keep falling to the ground, and I'm trying to catch them thinking, okay, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, but I just saw no relevance to it, and that's where the tornado came from. I didn't know what to do with the myriad of names that I kept learning, and I didn't know what the story was because, first of all, I was trying to focus on all the names. One thing that is very important when it comes to writing is that when you're trying to capture the person in your world, or even a movie or anything intimate, it's very important to keep the person's focus to such a point that they don't remember that they are reading, or that they are even capturing themselves in your world or your medium. Because once they take the time to say, oh, that's right, I'm reading, they're already disconnected from your world, and that's a big problem. Because then you have people like me who are going to, feel disconnected and upset that I'm not into the story, and then I'm going to start, taking things apart and thinking, why is this here? You don't want that. You want the person to focus on your story, but the way to getting that done is by having your characters know what they're doing, because I don't think they knew. I think the author knew where he wanted them to go, I just don't know if he knew how to get them there. And when writing a story, it's very important to focus on how you get to the end of that road. When you're editing, focus on what the goal is, what the problem is more than anything, because in the first 2 pages, I didn't care about 𝗫𝐶. I didn't know anything about her to care. I didn't think that the dream sequence in the beginning was enough to say, okay, this is who this person is, this is what's wrong with them. This is what they have to feel in order to get out of their comfort zone and go out into the unknown. The dream sequence simply told me that there's someone that she's thinking about and that she has a dog. That's not a problem to me, but you can make it a problem for me if something had happened to the dog. Let's say the dog was kidnapped and now it's like, oh, well, now I have to find out where the dog is. It's a simple problem, but it can lead to many other things, because then you could find the kidnapper and that person would be like, damn it, they got me again! So I didn't really get to focus on anything much more in the story other than the fact that there were so many characters, because that hurt my experience so much throughout the story that, I didn't get to observe anything else. I found myself very frustrated and disconnected throughout this book, and quite frankly, I'm only really upset because I just don't feel like the story was given the respect that it deserves. While it's very important to tell people that you've published a book and that you've made it to the end of the line, it's the quality of the book that matters. Not what they say, not the amount of people, and certainly not the language that goes on between the entire group. I'm going to have to give the story a 2 out of 5. But for anything that comes after, if there is anything that I've learned that is very important, it's that every story, in order to stay interesting and very captivating, there needs to be a sense of urgency. Someone famous once said, every chapter needs a blend of good and bad news. There needs to be a little bit of hell, there needs to be some chaos, but most of all, the character should be trying to escape from it, and the reader should care. The reader doesn't always have to identify with what's going on, but they should at least understand. The process to publishing is very important, because it's important to note that while you might think what you're writing is a masterpiece, everyone in the world might think the opposite. And it's not to say that one's writing is bad. It's that everyone's perspective caters to how they've experienced stories for their entire life, or even just their own life experiences. A great example is that someone once gave me 4 stars on a book. And I was like, oh man, I did a great job. I was extremely happy about it. And then another day someone gave me 2, and I was like, what the hell? I was completely discouraged from it at first. But it was very important to note that that person was in a completely different state of mind. They didn't experience as many science fiction elements as I had imagined. This person had been reading romance primarily their entire lives, and many things that didn't really touch on complicated elements. And that one particular chapter in my book was hell, and I was worried while writing that it would be that way. So with that said, there are 2 things to consider. It should be good to you, it should be susceptible to the beta readers, and most importantly, your editor should approve of it. The 3 of you don't have to agree on everything, but at least get an 8 out of 10 in that sense. You should feel comfortable with everything they're suggesting, and they should be able to get to the end of your book with no gripes. Well, not no gripes, but as little gripes as possible. Because nothing's perfect, but it's important that when you aim for that said perfection, you can not only say that you tried, but you at least met the most of that consumer's expectation. You'll be able to find this author's information in the description below, that being the Goodreads page and the Amazon page. And if you're an indie author that's looking for exposure in this sense, or if you're looking for reviews from me, Emily, or Maria, you'll be able to find our email below where you can contact us. What did you think about the video? Did you agree with my review? How do you think that an author should feel about a story before publishing it? Should it all be based on them? Or should it be based on the people? Or third, should it be in the middle? Leave a comment and a like below to suggest your opinion. And lastly, be sure to subscribe. This was Justin J of Books of All Shades, and I'll see you guys later.